Ravlic, and thank you for joining me for this brief video. It took 43 years for me to communicate, to engage with, to talk with someone who was born with or had the same medical condition that I have. See, I was born with a thing called hypoparathyroidism, and it took 43 years for me to discover that there were groups of people around the world that were communicating with each other and sharing knowledge and experiences. That only happened because I managed to find these groups on social media. It concerns me that we have our federal parliament starting to look more closely at banning people who are under the age of 16 from using social media platforms of certain types. Because one of the impacts of that will be that those who are under 16 struggling with their identity, perhaps with a rare disorder, like the one I have, struggling to find a way of finding people who have it. Now, hypoparathyroidism is rare. Any GP that I've spoken to has told me, a GP would possibly come across one or two cases in their career. So in some respects, I'm an endocrinologist, collector's item. There's not many of us around. And the advent of social media has meant that people in America, in the United Kingdom, in Australia and elsewhere with hypoparathyroidism are able to connect and are able to speak with each other. Imagine for 1 minute how isolated and excluded and set apart from the world I've felt for basically more than 4 decades, with something that very few people understood, and also with consequent effects. For example, those of you who've met me in person may have noticed I wear behind the ear hearing aids when I'm out and about. It's not because I had a hearing disorder as a result of listening to loud music or anything. Although I could probably forgive you for thinking that, given some of my musical taste. AC/DC, anyone? But the reason partial deafness came along is because hypoparathyroidism, causes it as a condition. So I hit 43, and then I discover these people around the place, and automatically there is a connection, a weight's lifted off my shoulders. And I feel as the person more whole than I had previously. It horrifies me, it terrifies me, it angers me, it saddens me that we have a parliament that is prepared to consider banning access to social media platforms that may well help people under the age of 16, ladies and gentlemen, avoid go through what I went through for more than 4 decades. I cannot comprehend the speed at which this legislation has been targeted for passage in the coming week. It is basically legislative malpractice for it to only have a 24-hour comment period from the community, for it to only have a half-day parliamentary hearing, and then people want it through. This has not gone through a proper due process with the community as far as I'm concerned. This will have unintended consequences, and it will have other consequences people have not even reflected on because of the haste in which they are trying to get this through. This merits a similar consideration to the misinformation and disinformation bill that will no longer be put through the Senate because people have reflected on the contents of that bill and they've said No, we're not supporting it. The government has now withdrawn it. The ban on under 16s needs to be rethought, and it needs to be rethought urgently, because there will be people who grew up like me, not connected with others with the same medical condition, who would feel excluded and isolated, even in amongst a group of people who you would know well, be it colleagues and be it others. This legislation needs more time to be thought about, and yet people want to rush it through in the next week. I sincerely hope they've thought about the consequences of pushing this through at the speed at which they want to have it done before they pull stumps, take their bats and balls, and go back to their electorates. After what may well be the last sitting week of the current parliamentary term, depending on when the Prime Minister decides to fire the starter's gun for the federal election campaign. If you want to know more about my story, I did an interview on hypoparathyroidism and how it impacted me, and how meeting people for the first time with that condition after 4 decades of not knowing anybody and not being aware of networks that could help. Tom Connell and I spoke about this in December 2018. Feel free to jump on that QR code up in the corner and have a bit of a look and see if you want to understand things a little bit more. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Stay safe, look after each other, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.